What do you get if you combine brass instruments, piano, organ, choir, congregation? You get beautiful worship. Stay tuned for Reach Out and Live. Welcome to Reach Out and Live, a program of music and scripture and sermon brought to you each week by the many viewers and members of First-Plymouth Church, Lincoln, Nebraska. Hi, my name's Jim, minister here at First-Plymouth. This week we begin our year of hope. We've sensed there's increasing despair in our world, and we need hope. Human beings have to believe that a better future is possible. So we start a year of trying to raise our hopes. The congregation has gathered. Let's join them.
The scripture today comes from Lamentations chapter 3, verses 20 through 26. I will remember them, and my soul is downcast within me. Yet this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. I say to myself, the Lord is my portion, therefore I will wait for him. The Lord is good to those whose hope is in him, to the one who seeks him. It is good to wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord.
A few weeks ago, there was a bit of news you might have missed. There was a woman in Texas doing yard work at her house. And all of a sudden, a snake fell from the sky and landed on her and wrapped itself around her arm. A snake from the sky. And as she's trying frantically to pull the snake off, about 2 seconds later, this massive hawk, obviously the hawk that had just dropped the snake, landed on her shoulder and began to peck at the snake, trying to get the snake back. So now she's got a hawk and a snake on her, and she's running around the yard yelling, "Help me, Jesus." Now, as a theological aside, I completely support going to Jesus at that moment. I never really get it why people pray to Jesus for a parking space. That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't get it when people pray to Jesus for the right lottery ticket number. I don't think that makes sense. But if you have a hawk and a snake attacking you at the same time, I categorically affirm going straight to Jesus. So she's running around. After a while, the hawk pries loose the snake and flies off again with it. So she had some contusions from the hawk and some abrasions from the snake, but she was okay. Now, I hate snakes. And the thought of a snake just falling from the sky and landing on you, that's a bad thought. But I think we're all looking for snakes falling from the sky these days. I think there's a type of negativity that we're always waiting for the other shoe to drop or the other snake to fall. I think there's a negativity on the loose about our economy, about our culture, about the environment, about the state of the world. This pervading negativity, just snakes falling from the sky all the time. And so I cherish that First-Plymouth has always been a place that tries to spread some positivity. And I know you've felt that a lot of religion can seem dour or guilt-inducing or shame-producing, and that at First-Plymouth, we try to share a positivity that human beings need positivity to flourish. I cherish this about First-Plymouth. A few weeks ago, when I was feeling the negativity was increasing, I preached this sermon called Life is Good, and I was using some of the scholarship of Harvard professor Steven Pinker, and he charted that in many ways our world is a better place than it was in the past, and he didn't understand why we don't affirm there's been progress. And he charted various things over the past 60, 80 years so that, for example, there is far less violence in the world than there ever has been. I know you read the newspapers and you, just because they always, if it bleeds, it leads. It's always headlines about negative things. But if you actually chart the amount of violence it's gone down, down, down. Violent crime in America has gone down, down, down. Violence across the world, you are far less likely to die a violent death than any other time in history. That even over the last 60, 80 years, wars between nation states has actually been going down, down, down. And he wonders, why don't we ever acknowledge some of the positive things that are happening? He charted the incredible way that we have decimated extreme poverty in the world. Decimated literally, meaning knocked off 9/10 of it. Over 80% of the world was in extreme poverty some 60 years ago, but we just moved it all the way down to about 15%. Now, he understands that if there's anyone poor anywhere, or if there's anyone suffering violence anywhere, we should tender our hearts to it. But why don't we acknowledge positive progress? He looked at literacy rates and how even just 60, 80 years ago, it was 80% of the people couldn't read and take part in the human project that way. And now almost 90% of the world can read. Why don't we celebrate this? That over that century, we literally doubled lifespan. This is amazing. And it's wonderful. Why don't we celebrate that? So, I've always felt good that First-Plymouth does try to emphasize the positive. That matters. But my friends, I think something deeper is now called for. I love the positivity of this church, but there's something happening, and we're called to a higher mission. I believe there's more and more people that are falling into despair. Not just negativity. Negativity is when it's a belief system. You might think, oh, I don't think things are so great. But despair is another level altogether. When a human being falls into despair, they lose a sense of life's meaning and purpose. They lose an ability to set any goals. They don't see any pathways to a better tomorrow. Despair immobilizes a human being. And we're seeing more and more people through the opioid addictions, through mental health crisis. And we were seeing deaths from despair, suicides and overdose. I believe right now First-Plymouth is being called to a deeper mission. Could there be a way that a local spiritual community could come alongside people and be a beacon of hope? We've always been a light of positivity, and we will continue. But could we take it even deeper? To companion people towards hope. It's right now, this weekend, that we begin the year of hope at First-Plymouth. Year of hope, love lights the way. And we've had task teams working all through the congregation. Might there be a way that we address this increasing despair? Could a church come alongside someone? We have task teams looking at whether we could come along the traumatized youth in Central Lincoln and help walk them towards a greater hope. We've been looking at whether we could provide some sort of free clinic for immediate psychotherapy. It takes almost 2 months to get in with a psychotherapist these days. We're beginning to look at ways we can partner with the organizations all through Lincoln and bring greater hope. We'll be bringing in some experts on hope, and we will learn hope is not just a wish. No, that hope is a strategy. And that they'll teach us that hope includes 3 things. First, for the human being to have some ability to set positive goals. And then for that human being to see a pathway towards those goals. And then to have enough motivation to work towards that better tomorrow. But despair can immobilize people. They can no longer see the pathways. Could a church come alongside people in this town and help forge the pathways to a better tomorrow? There was a famous psychology study done in the 1960s, And now, to my eyes, it looks kind of creepy and sadistic, but it's a famous study. The psychologists put dogs in cages, and then they would send electric shocks through the floor of the cage. And there was no way for those dogs to escape the shocks. And so they did it for a long period of time until the dog simply knew there was no way out of this situation. Then they took the dogs out of those cages and put them on a floor that also could send electric shocks, but the dog could simply walk away from it. But the dogs had learned helplessness. They had learned that they were in a situation they couldn't improve. There was no pathway, so even when they had the possibility, they'd just take the shocks. That's a creepy study to my mind, and frankly, you didn't need to do that study to know that if you give someone no options and there's no pathway, that they'll be disempowered. You didn't need to shock all those dogs. My friends, there are people in Lincoln that have had so much trauma and shocks in their life, and there hasn't been any way to walk away from it. And we're surrounded by these brothers and sisters that now see no way, don't see any hope. If a church is to do anything, it's to come alongside those people and help forge a pathway to a better tomorrow. It is our faith that tells this story again and again and again. It is our gospel that is trying to move human beings from despair and meaninglessness and hopelessness into a brighter hope. A human being has to know that there is some way for the things they hate to cease, some way for tomorrow to include more of the things they love, the things they hope for. And it's our gospel, it's our faith that shows there is a pathway. In Lamentations chapter 3, that book, Lamentations, is a mournful set of poems. Jerusalem has been destroyed by the Babylonians. There is no hope. Lamentations is a dirge of just how horrible life is. But then by chapter 3, it begins to sense, like they always do in our scriptures, that because of God there is hope. That if something looks hopeless, because of God, there will always be a potential pathway. But we need to come together as a community that believes in God, that believes in a better tomorrow, because then a pathway can be forged. This is our faith. It begins with the template of the Hebrew slaves in Egypt that see no way out. And then Moses comes alongside them and starts to show a pathway. And then God opens up a pathway through the Red Sea. And they have a goal. You have to have goals. They want to make it to the promised land, but you have to have the motivation to fight your way forward. And they do through the desert. This is our story. That unless you have the inspiration, the support, the possibilities, you can't make your way to these goals. But if you do and you keep forging ahead, you make it to the promised land. On that Easter morning, two things happened on Easter morning. God raised Jesus Christ, and God raised hope in the disciples. Because remember the story. When Jesus was killed, they fell into despair. The disciples gave up. But on Easter morning, God did what God does. God raised Christ to new life, and God raised hope in the disciples. Can we be a church of Easter morning and raise hope in the people that are languishing in Lincoln? The year of hope begins now. There will be many opportunities for each one of us to join in this process. The year of hope, Love Lights the Way, begins today. May God bless our ministry. May God bless our faith. May God bless everyone who is suffering at this hour. Amen.
It's wonderful that we could worship together like this. I hope it has brought you a sense of peace. Do you know you could join our worship services live every Sunday morning at 9, 10:30, or 11:59 on Facebook, YouTube, or our website. And all of that is made possible by gifts from people like you.
If you believe that an open-minded, loving congregation can help change the world, then consider making a donation. It will help us increase the love of God and neighbor, both in Nebraska and the world. If you would like to learn more about our church, go to firstplymouth.org. You can watch videos of the sermons, learn about our many programs and missions, then follow us to Facebook and become a friend. We now worship online at 9 a.m. and 10:30 on YouTube, Facebook, Vimeo, and our website. We also add live events, so join us online.
As I said, hope is very different than optimism. Optimism is just a belief system thinking the future is going to be better, but hope is what motivates you to engage in action right now to make things better. So, claim that action, claim that hope, and reach out and live.
Tune in again next week for another edition of Reach Out and Live.